Hello and welcome to the Sardonic Podcast. I am your host with the most personality and the least practical skills, Elijah Stubbs Roche. And joining me today, returning from last week, the 437th angriest gamer in the world with more rage quits than games connected to, Jake of Green Orgs Gaming. And for the first time on the
Hello.
desk, we have the professional gentleman and master thief who only steals the keys to your heart, Chance.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Hello.
And making his debut on the Sardonic Podcast, the man with so much chill I send in my beers before I drink them, the man with a voice like butter, the Vatty Vidya of Vermintide, Mario.
Hi.
All right. No, I didn't practice those all night. Don't worry. But I guess the big thing today is what you can tell by the name of the episode and by the title of my session notes. Today we're talking about Vermintide. A little crazy. I think it's fair to say that Vermintide came out of kind of nowhere. Compared to a lot of games, I didn't hear a lot of fanfare about it. I didn't hear huge spectacles about this game. It wasn't being evangelized. And yet, in a week, it kind of became our go-to game. I guess a week for me, maybe longer for you guys. But what I kind of want to talk about is, how did you guys come into Vermintide? Where did you guys, who told you about it?
All right, then I'll start. So I personally have been into Warhammer since like middle school, and also spent like all of middle school playing Left 4 Dead. So naturally, when you merge the two together, it was an obvious purchase for me.
Absolutely. I tend to agree. I actually heard about it from a couple of friends who were fans of the first game. They got me to play the first game, a couple of my friends, Adam and Kevin. But we played Vermintide a little bit. They were way more into it than I was. But with the release of the second game and just a lot of the qualities that we'll talk about later, it was a much more attractive purchase for me, and it was something that I ended up sticking with just because it has a lot to offer.
The man who spoke before me told it to buy it or he'd cut my head off.
And
Persuasive.
I think that's how I came into it too. I had a bunch of friends, and by a bunch of friends I mean the people in this call, which is a lot for me.
Mostly.
Telling me that this was a great game, that it was like medieval Left 4 Dead, and piqued my interest. I watched a few videos, and I made the decision. I bought the game, played it for a while, liked it so much I bought the collector's edition. Upgrade later. But it's a strange thing to talk about, like how a game can come out of nowhere, because there's a lot of fanfare usually with games. There's a lot of hype. But this is a game that really did kind of spread through word of mouth, based off just what I've read, what I've kind of found, what you guys are telling me. There seems to be this fan base that exists that evangelizes this game, spreads the word of Vermintide. And I'm going to say it now. I think that it's fair to say that now we are probably people going around doing the very same thing with a podcast like this. But now that we kind of got this introductory bit out of the way, I want to talk about who do you guys play? What characters do you play?
Can I start?
Oh, absolutely.
Come on.
Tell us, Kruber. Who do you?
Kill for old Kruber! That's my main. And yes, it was necessary to yell.
You could feel that audio peaking from here.
Absolutely.
You guys think I have edited him down so much?
Alrighty. So I mainly play Barden. He's a great character. Lots of fun to play. He's got a lot of fun quotes and everything, but I'm sure we'll touch on that.
Me personally, I kind of play all of them, but I guess the ones I play the most is probably a toss-up between Saltspire and Sienna.
I started out playing Saltspire because he had a cool hat and a black coat that I thought was kind of cool. And then when I figured out that one of his classes was broken, one of them felt useless, and the other one felt like I was playing his wet tissue paper, I started playing as Sienna. And I like playing Sienna so much, I wrote a song about playing as Sienna. And I do have a bet running with somebody that if this podcast episode gets 40 likes, I have to upload that video to YouTube.
Hint, hint.
But I guess the reason I play Sienna, or the reason why I like playing Sienna now, is she has a shitload of damage. I was kind of taken aback by the whole, wow, this is pretty much does it all, huh? Except for the surviving bit. That one's a little harder. But
I play Unchained Sienna, so it's the polar opposite. You just don't take damages, Unchained Sienna. That's why I like her.
But yeah, I enjoyed playing as Sienna, and I think it's one of my favorites. But why do you enjoy playing Kruber, Jake? I want to hear this from you.
Well, first of all, that mustache is just amazing. Specifically, the Foot Knight Kruber is the best class in the game, hands down, if you ask me. But also, he's also a very fun man at parties, and I find that his personality suits me very well as a character, as well as his playstyle as the beefy tank guy with the big weapon.
Yeah, I'm actually going to say something about that because I think it's something that you might find interesting based on what you think here. But an interview with the voice actor for Kruber, he describes the personality of Kruber as something along the lines of a man, like a 1,000-yard stare veteran of war, like he's seen some shit kind of guy. Like he's still a nice person, he's still a good person under it all, but like like inside he's seen some shit and it's messed him up internally. And I said, I thought, what? Wait, really? I don't get that vibe from him at all. Like
I would
wait.
agree there. I didn't get that vibe either, but I did end up reading his backstory, and if we want to talk about that, we can jump in on that. But he's definitely seen some shit, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
found that surprising as well.
He's a
Yeah.
deep dude.
Hmm.
So, what about you? Why do you play Barden, Chance?
Well, it's it's a lot of his characteristics. For those who may be listening to the podcast and for whatever reason don't know, Barden's the dwarf. He's got a glorious beard in all of his forms, no matter what class you're playing. And he's got a couple of playstyles that are super attractive to me because one of them is a huge tank one, and then one of them is a nutso berserker that just jumps in and drumsticks all around on all these rat men. But Barden is he's got a ton of quotes that I love, and of the group, I think he's the optimist, which is why I really like a lot of his personality.
And I think that reflects well on you because aren't you're like the Barden of your friend group. You're the guy who's always in a good mood and brings people together, which is why we and Jake
I
haven't
try to
killed each
be.
other.
Then I tilt up the face of the earth, but you know.
Hey, you're not the man I
Life is
introduced
about
as the
flux.
437th angriest gamer in the world.
I hold that title very proudly.
But yeah, I actually like that aspect of it. And one of the things about Vermintide is that even though I like Saltspire, I like Sienna, they're like my two favorite characters, there's not really a character in Vermintide that I dislike, that I really viscerally hate the character itself. I don't necessarily like playing it, but I don't have anything against the character design in question. And I think I don't play a lot of Barden, mostly because every single one of my friends plays Barden, and I have no opportunity to. But in the few rare instances that I do get to play Barden, I agree that, he's pretty fun. I like it. He's not Sienna, but I still like Barden as a character. He's still a fun guy. I like having him on my team, mostly because it means he's harder to friendly fire. He's a smaller target.
Yeah.
The hidden buff of the Barden on your team. No friendly fire on Legend.
Don't tell the devs.
But I don't know. Is there characters that you don't necessarily play in this game, but you still like that you find them funny when they're on your team?
Carillion. I like the way she insults people.
I'm gonna be real. I don't really like playing Kruber, but I like having them on my team. And that's not against Kruber's character. I think I just don't care much for like half of the weapons in his arsenal. Like I like the two-handed warhammer and I like his longbow, and that's about it. So if I don't have to, I won't play him. But
I would share that I would say the same sentiment about Saltspire myself. I think it is mostly because of like the weapons that he has. They don't really gel with me as much as other characters' weapons do. But I always like having him on my team, and I like him as a character.
yeah.
And who doesn't like Saltspire as a character? I mean, I hate it when he dies in 20 seconds because then I'm down a teammate. But if even just once I get to hear him say, "Holy Sigmar, bless this ravaged body," it's a worth game for me.
Always worth.
It's always worth it. But So, earlier in the podcast, before we started talking about the characters, we were talking about this game kind of just appearing out of nowhere. And it is kind of just blown up to a huge amount of success, an amount of success that, judging by the developers' speed at doing things they clearly weren't expecting, I get the sensation that they released this game and thought, oh, we're going to make a quick buck off this and move on to the next one, and then it blew up, and they're like, oh, wait, we have to support this game now. That wasn't plans. But I want to ask you guys what you think this game's major critical success, so with its reviews and things like that. Why do you think it has such great critical success?
Well, it's one of the few Warhammer games that isn't complete shit. That helps. I think that, and the $30 price point, plus the fact that, Fat Shark actually kind of listened to the community, I think that's really helped.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also worth noting that it's actually a good game, and that word spreads fast.
That is true, and there are 2 points that you guys brought up that I kind of want to touch on, because it's a more general topic about games, but also very applicable here, is the kind of dev community relationship, because there's a lot of games out there right now with not the best dev to player relationship. I think Destiny 2 is a really bad perpetrator of this, and a lot of I have the name off the top of my head and I can't remember it, but we'll move on from that. But we know that there's a lot of games that have that, where you have devs who seem like they do not care, that they're moving slow, that they don't respond to the community feedback at all. And I want to ask you guys, like, how important do you think it is for a dev team to listen to its community? Because all of us know how stupid a community can be, how one-dimensional or angry or salty they can be. Like, what's the line that a dev team needs to have between listening to its community and maybe telling them to go to hell?
Yeah, no, it's a good point for sure. I think one thing that Fat Shark has done really well is, so a lot of their criticisms will come to them directly through their subreddit, the Vermintide one, but something that they do there is, it's obvious that they still keep an eye on there, and they'll comment every once in a while. But what I really like about them is that they are attentive without being too engaged in the subreddit, because if you just get bogged down reading and responding to everybody's comments, you'll never really make any headway, especially if you start buying into a lot of I don't know, less than reputable opinions about the game. But I think Fat Shark did a pretty good job of kind of keeping it at arm's length and
nice striking balance there.
and saying, yeah, exactly.
You brought up sorry, you brought up a good point there, Chance, about keeping an eye but not necessarily engaging, and I feel like it's kind of a bad idea to not engage with your audience, especially with a game that's taken off so spectacularly, because we want to know what's coming, what's happening, the things that are changing, the things that are going to stay the same. And if you're not very clear on that, you end up with the Rise rework.
No, through League, yes. I mean, it's a good point, but I'm trying to look at it from the developer's perspective. Sometimes, I don't know, you don't want to make empty promises. You don't want to say, get yourself in hot water by saying, oh, hey, we're going to look at this when someone brings you a concern, and then it doesn't end up in the pipeline. And then you just look like a liar. Case in point, Dragon Master Swain, until they finally made good on that. But like, I don't know. I think they're erring on the side of caution.
A fine dance, if you will.
I think that's a good point. Mary, do you have anything to add to that conversation?
I think Jake and Chance have about summed it up.
And one of the things you actually brought up, Mario, as came to our attention, is the price point for this game. It's $30, if I recall. I think that's correct.
Mm-hmm.
That might change depending on your location, but where I live, it's $30 on Steam, and that is a very accessible price tag for a game that you can soak a lot of hours out of. There's a lot of games that you'll pay full price for and not have this much time with.
Yeah, you'll pay twice the price and get half the content.
Yeah, that's something that I think is something that's kind of overlooked, and that kind of sounds like you're underselling the quality of a game when you talk about its low price tag. And I want to make it very clear that is not how at least I feel at all on the matter. I think that the price tag is actually just an even better piece of consumer, I guess, protection, if you want to use that word. for the quality of the game. I think that $30 is fantastic. It's a game that's run really well on my computer, has not crashed a whole lot. Is again very fun, very well made with a lot of care, it seems. But the last thing I kind of want to touch on is how this game kind of came to be successful. We talked about it, how it came to us by word of mouth, and that had to have come from somewhere. So there's clearly was a fan base here, and I want to talk about it. Did any of you three play the original Vermintide 1?
I did.
I did as well.
Okay, so we had 2 players of the original, and would you have said that game was incredibly good?
Oh yeah.
I would have said if I had sunk more hours into it, I think I would have appreciated it more. But I ended up only playing it a couple of times with friends, and I sort of took it at face value. I didn't honestly give the progression a fair shot, so I didn't end up playing it a whole bunch. But I've really appreciated it this time around playing Vermintide 2.
So, I think that sentiment, this idea that this game, its predecessor was good enough that it had this dedicated fan base, and it was able to reach people like me and Jake who had never heard of this game before, I think speaks to the volumes of success that, just making a good game can give you. That was another point that you guys brought up, was that it was just a good game, and that's a gross oversimplification. But it's also very accurate. There's a lot of games that you feel like you're struggling to play them. You bought them, and it's the game that you're playing right now, but how much do you really like it? Do you sometimes regret the price tag or the purchase? And
especially when they get grindy.
Exactly. But I was wondering, for a game that seems to really be built around that, I want to talk about that idea of a game that is just good, that you can play it and you don't regret the purchase, because that's kind of a rare thing nowadays. That's
right.
Like, it's a free-to-play market, so I guess we're not spending as much money on the game itself, but there's a lot of money that you spend on games nowadays, and a lot of those games kind of suck. Maybe not like terrible, they're not like the room of video games every 6 weeks, but a lot of games are much worse than they are good. And I want to ask you guys about that. What is it that's making the game market kind of feel this way, just saturated with subpar content?
I think it's a lot of developers. I mean, I think it speaks maybe a little bit to just us as a player base in a very general sense, like just the player base of popular games, where we do kind of buy into the very free to play but full of microtransactions market. Like the reason it's still happening is because it works and they're making money off of it, and we're still buying their stuff.
A lack of backlash, if you will.
Yeah.
Over what could be seen as some very predatory practices. We're very shady.
I think it took us a while. I think it took a lot of the community a while to realize it was happening too. On that.
Yeah, you talk about microtransactions, but everyone who's played League of Legends, I think, has bought a skin at some point, and until the whole scandal with Battlefront 2 happened, had probably never thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, another thing with that is, when you buy a skin in League, you know what you're getting, as opposed to buying loot boxes in Overwatch, where you're throwing $20 at Blizzard and hoping you get what you want.
Straight gambling.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's kind of where I think we're still headed into some more loot box territory with new games. I think it's going to stick around for a little while longer, not forever, but I think that's going to stick around with a lot of online games that are very multiplayer focused. One thing I would like to mention about Vermintide, though, in that regard, is Vermintide does function on a loot box system, but not only is there currently not the option, a couple months out from release and stuff, there's not an option to buy any loot boxes or even throw more money at the game aside from buying the collector's edition. But the developers have explicitly stated that they have no plans in the future to introduce microtransactions or buyable loot boxes. And I thought that was a great hero move from them, and contributed to the word of mouth recommendations that I gave to people.
Well, I got some good news for you guys, since you guys seem to have some strong opinion about loot boxes. It should warm your guys' heart to know that Belgium in Europe has outlawed loot boxes for a number of major games and are giving them huge fines and actually threatening to prison sentences
Goodness.
Prisons.
for these
Jeez.
for the developers. Yeah, if they don't remove the loot box system. They had 4 days, by the way. these major game developers were given 4 days by the Belgian legislators to remove these systems or face millions of dollars in fines and possible prison sentences.
It's a power move by Belgium. I appreciate them for it, but it's like,
Well, 4 days seems like a little too short.
yeah, it's very harsh. But I suppose, you know, you would kind of start with fines and stuff. At that point, you wouldn't be, you know, 4 days, and then on the 5th day, if you're not there, it's like that's it. We're pushing prison sentences. They're probably trying to get a little bit of money out of them, not in like a necessarily predatory way, but in more of a like, we're going to fine you because this has been a problem in our market for a while.
All right. Now that we've
way.
talked about the nice meta things of this game, we've evangelized the game, I want to talk about the game itself, the actual act of playing the game. And the first thing I have on my session notes here is the aesthetics. I have always been the kind of person that graphics are secondary to me, but I think that good aesthetics in a game can really elevate things. And one of the things I've thought to myself once or twice when I played this game is that I like its level design. And while yes, it is kind of just a series of multiple linear levels, see Left 4 Dead once again, comparisons are strong here, the actual way it's designed feels almost like Dark Souls 3 is how I'd describe it. Because like one of the things I remember about Dark Souls 3 was walking out, seeing the horizon, and then later discovering that I was going to that place. That's where I was going to end up. And there's a lot of parts in Vermintide where you look at a level and you can actually see that. You can actually, I think it's on the screaming bell, you can actually see the bell right from the beginning.
Yeah, Empire in Flames also, you can see the manor you're going to go blow up when you first go over the horizon.
And
Gives you a real sense of the world you're traversing.
Yeah, and I like that. That's a really cool sensation, being able to kind of see what visual progress can look like at the beginning. And I like that design. But I also know that this game has some great aesthetics. And I want to ask you guys what your favorite aesthetics are, the little subtle things.
So I'll go first. What I really like about the aesthetics is, like you had mentioned, with seeing your objective in sort of the opening crawl for the level. What I really like about that is that you'll see it as part of the background, much like you would in the background of any other game, in a sense that, you know, in your average adventure game, you might not actually think it's traversable. But something I thought that was really cool that you pointed out was its similarity to Dark Souls 3's environment design. And I think in that regard, it like I think it relates to that in that both games, at least for the first part of it, feel I don't know, the architecture kind of lends itself to a cramped and limited area, but the distance it covers and the actual volume of traversable terrain is actually just massively bigger than you would have initially thought. And that's something that I appreciate for.
I think it's important to also appreciate how simplistic a lot of it is, and that allows them to make the world much more accessible to the players. For instance, a lot of the second act takes place in a forest, and it's easy to just throw up trees, but still make a very, very detailed landscape out of simple elements.
I think personally, I really like how the aesthetics make it feel like you're in, you know, the world of Warhammer. It's not, there's like a lot of little things, you know, like whether it be, you know, everybody's dying of plague because you're fighting against Nurgle, a Norse tribe that worships Nurgle, the god of disease, or it's hard to put into words. Yes,
I think I feel what you're getting at.
It feels like it feels like the people at Fat Shark really actually loved Warhammer. There's a lot of love and care put into how the world works.
Right, and a lot of the environment's very easily understandable. Like a lot of it takes place in the human kingdom, and you can tell they're very simple, like human houses, but the architecture is a little bit more like, kind of stretched, maybe like
Yeah.
not Gothic, but like Tim Burton Gothic. And it's like, it's very simple stuff, but it still sets the tone, and you're in that Warhammer
Yeah, it's like
version of like human regular city type thing. Yeah.
it's a subtle part of the Empire's lore is they build up because they can't expand outwards because of all the beastmen in the forest. So a lot of their buildings just sprawl upwards, and you see that a lot in the game.
Yeah, and it characterizes their stuff really well. I love
Yeah.
that.
That's one of those very nice subtle nuances of aesthetics that I really think can elevate a game. One of the things I actually noticed, and it's actually one of the things that I kind of enjoy about Sienna, is I think this happens with Barton as well. But if you use your fire staff on a rat, it will burn his fur off.
Oh yeah.
That's a little thing. That's something that you might not notice if you don't play Sienna a lot. You don't necessarily see that, and I like that little detail. That's something that's really small, but it kind of just it adds that texture to being a fire wizard that you might not see in a game like Skyrim, where a fireball feels like you're hitting somebody with a baseball with a fire texture on it.
Yeah. And like another subtle thing I like is the Blightstormer and the Leech. They're both like really big fat guys. It's because they're bloated because of all the diseases they have. They're Nurgle worshippers. That's another subtle detail that I like.
Mm-hmm.
I feel, since I've never really been into Warhammer, that Vermintide 2 has helped me establish the world of the Warhammer fantasy. May it rest in peace, for myself. I can see it now.
Yeah.
I have a little aside here because I know you guys probably want to get into this one, but part of the aesthetics thing here is banter. The characters have a lot of personality, in my opinion. Like, people compare it to Left 4 Dead, but in Left 4 Dead I always felt like I was just playing as the same 4 people, just which skin I was using. They had a little bit of character, but there was not a lot to them. But in Vermintide, your choice of character is very profound because they actually have a lot of character to them. There's a lot of personality packed into these 5 adventurers that we have. And so I was getting into voice acting and the banter here. What are your favorite voice lines in this game? And before I get 40 Saltspire quotes, I'll just go ahead and limit everyone to one Saltspire quote a person.
Oh, I know mine. Mine is when you're playing as Sienna and she says, "Come here, little ratties. Auntie Sienna has a surprise for you." That's my favorite voice.
I think no one will be surprised to hear that my favorite voice line is, "All right, come on, inhale. Kill for old Kruber."
Oh yeah. My favorite voice line for one of my favorite voice lines for Barton, for when he's ulting, he just shouts Grimnir. I feel like it's not big enough to count. My favorite my favorite one that I ripped off of the wiki is when a Blightstormer spawns. One of the things that Barton will say is, "I'll show that Wozzeck some wins from my house." And that's the kind of character I really appreciate in the game. Is everybody's real snarky. They have a lot of fun too.
I'm probably the most unoriginal person in the room because all of my quotes would probably be Saltspire quotes, and I said I'd limit everyone to one. I think my favorite one that I heard in Vermintide 2, like the one that just absolutely made me laugh for the first time, was I remember that I think it was a troll. No, it was a Chaos Spawn was eating Carillion, and Saltspire shouts out, "The elf seeks to provide the beast nourishment. Quickly stop her!"
Stop Carillion. Don't stop the Chaos Spawn.
I'm probably misquoting that line horribly, but that's just how it is in my head. And that was just the moment where I realized, okay, Saltspire is everything he says should be on a t-shirt. But speaking of quotes, I think they actually put in their patch notes that they were putting Saltspire's "Holy Sigmar, bless this ravaged body" back into the game.
Oh yeah, that was highly requested actually. So it was pretty cool of them to put it back in the game.
That's just a great quote.
Yeah.
That should be on a t-shirt. That everyone should own at least four copies of said t-shirt.
I'll buy them.
So I have a section on lore here. I am obviously not an expert on Warhammer lore. That is why I have recruited Chance and Mario here, because they cumulatively have more lore knowledge than I do, and that's fantastic. But what I want to ask you isn't maybe just about the lore itself, because obviously Warhammer lore is just kind of a generic conversation to have. I want to ask specifically how Vermintide 2, in your opinion, is a reflection of lore. How well does it hit the mark?
Well, yeah, Mario hit on that pretty spot on earlier, where he was talking, where we were kind of going over just how well it establishes itself tonally in this game, where that whole thing about the human kingdoms building up rather than out, and Mario had the knowledge to back that up because of all the dangers that they face outside of the town walls. Like that was easy to understand. It's very visually communicatable, and I think that the whole game does that very well. And you can obviously tell where you're at, whether you're running through the human kingdoms. There's the Elven ruins. There's the Norscan tribe areas. Like everything is it's very clear what kind of inspiration and what kind of I guess what kind of society uses those settings, since a lot of times they're established like Elvish places or Norscan places. It's very easy to tell what kind of culture they have.
Is there any of those small subtleties, Mario, that you see? Like, you told me how the visuals represent it, but is there some maybe like the story or how maybe areas look or maps and regions that really stands out to you regarding lore accuracy?
I think right off the top of my head, one thing I really like is when you get ambushed by the Skaven, they'll send all these Skaven slaves at you. And Skaven slaves in the game, they're basically just shaved rats. They're all pink. They look nasty. They barely got any clothes on. I like how those are what get sent out at you during an ambush, because that's a very Skaven thing to do, is to just swarm the enemy with Skaven slaves, lowest of the low, and then pelt you with ranged fire. So when you're getting
You're
when
talking
you're
about when
getting
you get
globadiers, rattling gunners shooting at you while getting swarmed by Skaven slaves, it's a very Skaven thing to do.
so that's why Skaven make me want to can end it right there.
Yeah.
That is definitely not how the Norska do combat, though. In fact, do the Chaos people have any ranged specials besides the Blightstormer?
Not in game.
Huh.
No.
And does the Blightstormer even count? I feel he only exists to ensure that guy who got downed is dead as shit.
Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah. A lot of their design, I think, was kind of focused around, it was built around the effect that they wanted them to have on the game, like making that Blightstorm sort of a moving hazard.
But on
It's a zoning thing.
Right.
Yeah, but on the topic of gameplay patterns, we are about to get into gameplay. We've talked at length about how this game looks, how it's successful, some nice fun things about it. Let's talk brass tacks. Let's talk gameplay. I think that at this point we have made the fair comparison that it is just like Left 4 Dead. But I don't think that that's a fair comparison to make. Because I get bored with Left 4 Dead after about 2 games. And
I would say Vermintide is Left 4 Dead with a more refined combat system.
I would agree. I think that it took the legacy that Left 4 Dead kind of left since it's been out, and I think it's fair to say that Left 4 Dead's been dead for a while. But it's long enough that Vermintide 2 can come in and scratch that itch that we didn't know we had, but in a more modern day adaptation to it, where it's got a little bit more depth to it than that game did, and people can people can really dig into that and have a modern gaming experience in that same genre.
So, I know that since me and Jake are not lore people, and I don't think we're the same aesthetics people, Jake, I want to hear from you what this gameplay kind of has been like for you. Like, what was your big experience with the gameplay of Vermintide?
Well, the first thing I want to say is, other than the level Into the Nest, I think the gameplay is subpar to nothing I've played recently.
That is the most confusing way you could have possibly phrased that.
You know what? You don't like the way I talk.
That is more layers of double negative than than this to go with that.
You know what? I'll say it again. I think that this game is above every game I've played since Nier Automata came out in actual gameplay. Okay. And for those of you who don't know me or haven't played Nier Automata, that is the highest possible praise I can give a game. I feel like I am a medieval badass son of a gun, just running around mowing through rats and Vikings with a halberd or a sword or a shotgun and just decimating them. I feel that way, and it's important to me, at least, in a game that I feel like what I'm doing is reflected very well through the gameplay.
And may I mention when we were talking about like these little gameplay nuances earlier, it escaped me there, but Jake just reminded me of it. Was that when you swing your weapon, in a lot of cases, unless it's one of those large sweeping weapons like the halberd or the two-handed sword, a lot of times, specifically with like an axe or a dagger, you will swing it and stop, and it's just got this really nice kind of chunking stop where you really feel like you're actually like impacting something, whether it's armor or one of the Skaven slave rats or whatever, but you feel that impact. So that's something that I appreciate.
That's actually a really good point, and something that I kind of want to bring up about the gameplay, because this is something that I really enjoy. It is a game that really tried to sell itself on its melee idea, and to me, it kind of really feels like a good melee experience, because one of the things I dislike about a lot of games is that sometimes you swing a melee weapon and it just kind of like slashes through people like butter, and there's like a sound effect that just kind of sounds like something that they pulled out of a stock file portfolio, and like a little blood splatter. Like it's a very it doesn't make the swing have a lot of, I guess, punch to it. But the sound directing of Vermintide, when you swing a weapon and you hit something, you get this really nice, satisfying, just crunch sound, this like clunk sound that you get, combined with just like a weapon that just kind of the camera shakes in the right ways. Just there's a lot of kind of kinetic energy to the game that is just really satisfying. And that might make me sound like a sociopath, but there is just this kind of.
But that's violent video games.
But that's just, I don't know. It's something I think is really subtle, but is so great in a gameplay sequence, because you can bog down Vermintide really badly by just saying it's a series of enemies that rush at you and you hit the melee button as fast as you can. Because if you oversimplify it, that's kind of what it is. But when those hits hit, when your weapon like connects with an enemy, there's just that really satisfying feeling to it that is just really lost in a lot of games I play. And I don't know, is there aspects to the gameplay that you guys just fell in love with? Obviously, besides
honestly,
jumping puzzles, because
I really like it when how some weapons will actually cut rats in half, and there's a select few that'll actually cut them diagonally. I think that's a really nice attention to detail.
Very powerful feeling too. I don't know, it's great imagery.
Yeah, and I guess like power fantasy is something that comes up in video games a lot, but like there's so many games that like try to feed you a power fantasy and then just fail miserably at doing it. Like Vermintide makes you feel like a badass. Like there is this element of badassery that is very present in Vermintide. You're in it, you're mowing things down, there's huge piles of dead bodies, and it because they're not humanized at all, they're zombie looking Vikings and rat people, you don't feel too bad about it. There's not like a moral ambiguity layer to it. And in other games you have, like, I guess Dragonborn is a great example of a failed power fantasy. You're Dovahkiin, you are the savior of the world, you're gonna defeat Alduin, you're gonna do all these heroic things. You are Skyrim's bitch. Like, you, let me guess, somebody stole your sweet roll? Motherfucker, I just cleared out a bandit camp. I just killed 40 people to make your town safer, motherfucker. Well, you
I
treat me
think
like
I
this.
think Vermintide has something similar to that though, because it's like, yeah, you feel like a badass when you clear out a bunch of Skaven slaves around you, but if you're playing on champion and you get poked by that one slave behind you and lose a fourth of your health, you're kind of reminded that okay, maybe I'm not invincible.
Hmm.
That's true. I think it's also fair to note that we, as a group of 4 players, have not played an large amount of Legendary or Legend difficulty. I have
I,
played one game of it.
I haven't even. I stick with champion. I'm too scared of legendary.
Yeah, I've tried Legendary a couple times, but I don't think, or a fair few times, but I don't think I've ever actually finished one of them. We always just get wiped.
I think me and Jake played a Legend game one time.
I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, because we got the war camp, wasn't it? It was the war camp. We went into the war camp.
I don't want to talk about it.
We made it to the little town, and then a boss spawned and that just absolutely destroyed our team. It was a very interesting experience, and I guess that's true because that's an aspect of gameplay I think some people might really be turned off by is this idea that there's a difficulty that's just like, well, I dropped my guard for half a second, guess I'm dead. But I don't know. Like when we talk about gameplay and difficulty is such a subjective term because we die a lot on veteran. We have a disproportionate amount of failures in veteran mode, and I feel like that's unacceptable for a number of people that have level 30 characters and close to 600 hero power.
Well, I think on that note, that's what I like about the difficulty design is just because of the way the game works. Like you can be great and you can be playing on champion or maybe even legend regularly. But that sense of never, even on lower difficulties, being like 100% safe, like that, you can still just kind of, if you're not giving it 100%, if you're playing a little carelessly, just because of the way the game works, you can still be punished for that, which is, in my opinion, good game design. I like it.
Jake, do you have anything now on topic of difficulty?
On the topic of difficulty, I think it was a very good idea when they decided to up the reward for playing on veteran because it helped casual players feel like they didn't need to play on the more difficult settings if they didn't want to. But I also feel like as gamers, we all want to say we've beaten the hardest games, and I think they really did a good job of scaling up the difficulty. It feels like I'm going from a veteran to a champion when I go up against just even a rat in the difficulty settings.
And when you finish that legend mission, you feel like a legend.
Exactly. I think it's important that I feel like I accomplished something difficult rather than just the guys are bullet sponges and don't die as fast.
Yeah.
Barry, what about you on the topic of difficulty in this game?
Well, I would agree. I would say, the same thing with Jake. It was really good that they upped the veteran rewards because a large part of this game revolves around your hero power. And if your hero power is too low, you're going to have a really bad time clearing the higher difficulties because you're not going to have the damage, the cleave, all that. So it's good that they increase the rewards for playing veteran because I never would have survived my champion runs if I wasn't overleveled. But yeah, I would. The only thing to say about difficulty is champion's a little borked right now because of special spawns, but I don't have anything to really say about it.
This is a term that I think came up a few times in this last conversation, and it's such a binary term. It really does divide player communities really extremely. Is the term casual gamer versus a hardcore gamer or a gamer, whatever term you want to use here. And one of the things I always kind of liked about Vermintide, something that I think is a really good step in a positive direction, is this game feels accessible as far as gameplay is concerned. It's not weighted down in large amounts of mechanics. It's very simple to understand. There's not a lot of metrics going on. You kind of just have one metric, hero power. You have simple mathematics. You're not crunching 10,000 numbers to figure out how much damage you're dealing. So it does kind of feel like it's accessible to a casual audience. It's like somebody who's maybe isn't willing to play 30 hours of a game in 2 days. I think that it's pretty good, at least for a game, in my opinion, to open itself up to a new player base. I think that there's a lot of games right now that trying to break into that game can just feel so aggravating because it's just it takes you too long. It's too much of a time investment to get to a certain skill level in that game. And I want to ask you guys about it. How hard was it to break into Vermintide for you guys? Like, what was the official skill differential you needed?
I would say it has a learning curve to get used to just the survival aspect of it. Like if you come in familiar with that style, like a Left 4 Dead type game, you'll be on better footing. But I honestly say, like, give it an hour and a half, and you're good, and you know how to survive and what to do, which is really nice.
I would agree with this. I don't think I ever really struggled super hard to get into Vermintide. To play on higher difficulties, yeah, because there's more. You need to learn stamina management. You need to learn when to shove, when to attack back. Yeah, but to actually get into the game, I think it's pretty accessible, I would say.
For sure.
The floor for entry, I would say, is having a computer, and the ceiling for potential is actually surprisingly high for a game that at first glance looks very simple. You can do a lot.
Yeah, and I like that. That's a really cool design, in my opinion.
Yeah, can I expand on that a second?
Absolutely.
Okay. I just kind of wanted to make the point that I think what they've done is really good in that it is accessible to so many people, because a lot of times at the higher difficulties, or when you start getting to the higher end of gear score in this game, it does a good job of rewarding those hardcore players without feeling like you're kind of shafting the casual players. And I think it's a really great move on Fat Shark's part, because in my opinion, casual versus hardcore audiences can be extremely fluid, varying from title to title. Someone could be super hard into Vermintide, but they play another competitively oriented game like Overwatch or something just on the weekends, and they don't put that same amount of time into it. Like genres can kind of or the difference in, I don't know, just game titles can mean the difference between whether someone is considered in the hardcore player base or the casual player base.
That's very true, because I am a hardcore, I guess you call me a hardcore Dead by Daylight player. I am not a hardcore League of Legends player anymore, for good reason. But that's something that, especially in this game, I enjoyed. It feels rewarding. I think that's a really good element of gameplay that I think we've talked a lot about now, and subtle things. But what I want to get to real quick before I hit my 55-minute mark is I want to ask you guys, what is the part of the gameplay of your characters or your play styles that this game really selectively enhances? Like, what is the high points of your preferred play style, and how does the gameplay here really enhance it?
I
Pressing
like how,
F is... Sorry,
I like
you
how
go.
I like how Sienna's a pyromancer, and she's a fire wizard, and her attitude really shows that. I guess that's not gameplay, but that's what I like. Or not a pyromancer. What are they called?
Fire wizards.
No.
Bright Wizard.
No. The actual term when you like to set stuff on fire.
Oh,
Pyromaniac?
Pyromaniac. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think that as far as playstyle goes, I feel like I get to hit F as Foot Knight and watch a bunch of dudes fall over, and that's just makes me all giddy inside.
What about that makes you feel giddy inside? Like, how does the game feel?
It makes me feel like I am a large man in real life, which I kind of am, and I like to knock people down, but I'm too polite to do it. So I have an outlet in video games to now do this thing that I want to do in real life.
And I like if I can jump on Barden, what I really appreciate is that with each character's specialization, you can see a very dramatic shift in like what kind of ability of that character it is highlighting. And when you're playing the Berserker Barden, he feels very savage. I want to get in the middle of the fight, leap in, and just tear him to shreds. But on the other side of that coin, you have the Ironbreaker class, where you're very, very tanky, and you still want to be in the middle of the fight, but you're all about that crowd control and shrugging off damage and just being this like unstoppable wall between you and the rest of the party.
I think for me, one of the things I really enjoy when I'm not launching my pyromancer ult into people standing behind me, there is this just like really nice, satisfying sound and aspect. You throw the headhunter out and it'll hit a chaos warrior right in the head, and you just hear this little like satisfying plink. Just that.
Oh, the
That
crit
little,
noise
like,
is very good. Yeah.
plink. It's just like yes, and he's dead, and I know it. I don't know. It's like there's something about that, like just that little moment that just makes it feels so good. Like I actually get upset when other people take the Chaos Warrior kill from me because of it, or if like the headhunter veers off right before it's about to hit the Chaos Warrior. I'm just like, oh,
It's like, that was mine.
it was gonna hit him. It was gonna be so satisfying. So I think for the last segment, originally I was going to talk about the members of the community, but then I didn't do my research, so I was not prepared for that part. So instead I want to ask you guys about your stories with Vermintide, because we all have them. We've all had those moments where things just hit the fan super hard. Every time you play the Skittergate, it's like you have infinite healing items, and then for some reason your whole team gets wiped at Rasknit anyways. But we were playing... I was playing with Tristan, and I believe I was playing with Cheswick. And we were playing in the very first level on Recruit, and it felt like every 10 seconds there was a hook rat, and then a life leech, and then an assassin, just like in rapid succession. Just like every 10 seconds I was saving one of those two from from a disabler. And this just went on the whole game until we got killed by a Chaos Patrol walking by the statue.
I believe I was in this game with you, and I quite vividly remember your words as being, "What the hell, are we on effing champion?" And I believe you didn't even say fucking, which is weird for you.
No, I like that little thing where I'm like, where I do the guttural consonant sound. Where it's like my little like fucking. Are we have fucking champion mode?
Yep.
Yeah, like that. Because you know, I guess I'm secretly Cockney, and you guys don't realize it. But yes, you were in that game, and there was a Chaos Patrol, and if I recall correctly, right as that Chaos Patrol came in, we were trying to avoid it, and then the swarm spawned in. And
yes, and
between
one
the
of
two.
you or me got grabbed by a hook rat and pulled off where the other people couldn't help. So it was 3 versus a swarm and a Chaos Patrol.
It was like the worst thing that could have possibly happened. It was on Recruit difficulty, and we got wiped there because just like the worst luck you could possibly have. Oh, you guys, do you have any great AI director moments?
I always think it's funny when sorry. I always think it's funny when like 3 of the other party members wipe, and then like you're just spectating the one dude desperately trying to block off the horde, trying to get some space between him and the horde. But you know it's pointless, and then he just gets jumped on by an assassin, so it's all pointless anyway.
that illusion of hope, where you're just watching it all fall apart.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think my favorite experience in Vermintide from just like crazy fun gameplay perspective was we were doing Fort Braxenbrücke, and it was actually pretty early on when we were still kind of getting the ropes of the game, like first day we were playing it and such. But we had a great feeling run, lots of healing items, felt very prepared, and we got to that area by the river after you drop down from the cliff. And you'll go along this river where that's just like the whole side is one big open river. The rest of the side is up against a cliff. And there's sometimes a boss spawn there and rat ogre spawns. We had what felt like a very controlled fight up until the very instant we notice that we are all on the same side of this rat ogre. And he just bats all of us into the river at once. And we insta-die. And it was terrible, but we were all just laughing our asses off.
We were playing Fort Braxenberger the other day, Chance, and there was the random guy we had in our game, the Foot Knight, who rushed the rat ogre off the cliff into the river, insta-killed it. That was a fantastic one.
Good stuff.
Oh, Jake, what about you? What's your favorite AI moment?
I think my favorite, rather than a favorite AI moment, I once witnessed a a hook rat drag our good friend Tristan upwards into the sky rather than off somewhere by himself, and I think that is worth mentioning.
That was a beautiful moment.
That was a great thing too, because you two were actually already outside the barn on Against the Grain. I was still in there, so when I like saw him get hooked, I was like, "Oh, just turn around and save him." But then he's like on top of the roof of the barn. All of a sudden, I'm like, "Wait, what? Tristan, no!"
Performed the
What is
celestial
this?
juke.
That's not how gravity works, Hook Rat. Please, that's my friend. Come back. He
It
carried
was his time.
He carried him to the top of the skybox, and then when he tried to like put him up on the hook, he died from the falling damage, coming back down. Oh my god! And the best part is that every time we've played Against the Grain since, he's been grabbed by a hook rat in that exact same spot, and it's like traumatized him.
It's made him paranoid too, just about hook rats in general, just anywhere.
That was the most bullshit death I've
I also
ever
find
seen.
it hilarious how in like 162 hours of Vermintide 2, you are still the only person I've ever seen just straight up fall through a level and die.
And I've done it so many times too. That's the best part. There's a reason there's a line in my song. It's Victor falls through the floor. It's happened. God, how many times has that happened? It's happened like 4 or 5 times now. Just
Only when you have the Grim.
yeah.
Just
You're-
enough to still be funny is the answer.
What was the amazing clutch moment on the Screaming Bell. It was another one that stands out to me. You guys got destroyed by a biotroll. I'm gonna say it like that because that's accuracy at its finest. We as a 4-man unit, 3 of us died to a biotroll and a horde, and I think there was a fucking storm patrol that all spawned at once. I think it was on Champion, and it took out 3 of you like instantly. Just 3 of you gone. I was the only one left alive. And I had to kite a biotroll all the way up to where Chance, you, and Mario were. And I had to free you guys, and we finally killed the biotroll after about 40 minutes of just brutal fisticuffs because we had our one damage dealer was too far away for us to save.
I remember one time on Fort Braxtonbrooke, 2 of my team got killed. It was just me and a Foot Knight Kruber. I was Ironbreaker Barton fighting a Chaos Spawn, and it straight up took like 20 minutes to kill because neither of us did any fucking damage. And then we ended up fucking dying like right after that anyway because of a Rattling Gunner. God, shit.
Oh man, Jay, what was your favorite? What's a mishap that stands out in your mind? Just a great wipe.
Well, I believe the time it was me as the Foot Knight, as well as a Slayer Barden and a Zealot, Salt Spire, all ulted at a boss on Hail Scourge on that cliff face that's collapsing, and all 3 of us just insta went over the cliff and died. Leave poor Sienna to her own devices.
Goodness, what an incompetent party. Who could play that carelessly and make that kind of mistake?
It was very simultaneous. We all had the thought at the same time to jump on this boss, and as I recall, it was a rat ogre, and we just died, just instantly.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think that's
man.
one of the most fun parts about this game is that you get just really fun stories because there's a lot of really I don't know, just very really pivotal moments in combat where even if you think you're doing great, you could just get stomped on.
I think we were playing Into the Nest because in one of the rare instances where we didn't all just quit that level, we were playing Into the Nest, and there's the part where you are crossing the bridge that leads to Scarrick's little boss fight arena. and a bile troll spawned there. And I remember this particular incident because, boy, it really sucked. So, we had just crossed the bridge. We were just about to hit Scarrick's quarters. And a bile troll with no warning comes out of somewhere and just hits two of us off the cliff immediately. Just immediate two-person death. I remember it was like the last thing I saw was, oh, huh, there's a bile troll around here. Where could he be? Gone. It got better. It got better. Because our teammates decided that to get us the respawn, they would go pull us out of Scarrick's boss room. So I got revived into a boss room with a bile troll. And Scarrick. I was livid. That was the shortest Scarrick fight I had ever been a part of. Not to say that many of them last long anyways, but that boss came straight out of Dark Souls 2. They grabbed the old rat authority and just gave him armor and a halberd. He has the same broken hitboxes from Dark Souls 2. They didn't patch those. Oh my god. I'm glad they reduced the hitbox on Scarrick's halberd. Because that thing was legendary with its phantom range. That's what they don't tell you about Scarrick, is it's actually a magical halberd. It hits you from across the arena. Is there any of the scripted bosses that you guys particularly hate? That you just like, it's time to quit? Respawn level?
Scripted bosses?
Scarrick.
Or Rat Snicked.
Scarrick is quite rude.
Can't.
Yeah,
The amount of times I've gotten screwed because of his stupid rattling cannon. Oh, can't.
I feel like I don't hate Rasknit. It's just that that's such a long level itself, and when you die to Rasknit, it just feels terrible.
Yeah,
On
and
the
it's
flip
such a
side-
shame too, because I love the Norska part of Skittergate,
Yeah, it's such a
but getting
good
through all that and then dying to him
That's
is
nice.
just such a tilter.
That one's usually a good way to end the night. But I think that Into the Nest has a equally annoying boss, but with a much worse level attached to it. I hate Into the Nest as a level, and not the design of the level. I think the Dwarven City Underground is actually really cool. I hate Into the Nest because I'm lucky to get to Scarrick. I think everyone knows the room I'm talking about, but it's the big plaza room that has like two
Oh, the
pools of
forge.
water that
Yeah.
you just know a boss is gonna spawn in. It's just like 90% of the time it feels like there's a chaos spawn in that room. I hate that fucking room. You get in there and it's just, you know you're dead. You know your team is gonna wipe there because there's gonna be a chaos spawn out of nowhere.
If it isn't a chaos spawn, it's a patrol spawning right outside the doorway outside.
Ah. Oh,
That reminds me of a time a boss was in that room, and 3 of us wiped to it, and the last guy, I can't remember who it was one of us, backs out to try and kite the boss down the stairs, and lo and behold, storm vermin.
Yeah, whole patrol right there.
I think the patrols are actually the worst. Like, those are the secret bosses of Vermintide. Because
Oh yeah, those have been that way since the first one, though. That is one thing that I became quite familiar with.
Patrols wouldn't be as hard if it weren't for the fact that shielded storm vermin are such a pain in the ass to kill.
Mhm.
I agree.
there was one particular patrol that we had. It was on the first level again. I think that one's, I forget its name off the top of my head. But we were near the statue near the end of the level in the courtyard, and the Chaos Patrol is walking towards us. Not a lot of places to hide there. So we kind of like hit up on the cliff face, trying to like our best to like just please just pass by, please just pass by, please just pass by. And as we're going to hide, there's a storm patrol coming from the direction we just come from. So we are sandwiched between two patrols. I was like, well, this run's over. We're done here. We tried our best not to aggro them, but without fail, they turned into the wall that we were just like leaning up against, and had a storm patrol and the chaos patrol on us at the same time. And it was the worst feeling.
the actual nightmare scenario.
But I'm at 70 minutes, so I have to cut my podcast quickly before I go over my 72-minute rule. But thank you guys for being on the show. Thank you for contributing here, and I hope that you all have a fantastic day. Thank you for staying tuned, and I hope you guys will come back again. This has been the Sardonic Podcast with your host, Elijah Stubbs Roche.